Have you ever noticed that people only realize what they lost when it's already gone? When the laughter fades, the conversations stop, and the empty spaces in their life can't be filled by anyone else, that's when regret finally hits. It hits hard. It creeps in quietly at first, like a shadow in the back of their mind, whispering, "Maybe I let something irreplaceable slip through my fingers." And it's almost unbearable to watch because the truth is, that feeling is born not out of love but out of absence. Humans don't fully understand what they have until it's gone. That's the cruel yet fascinating part of life. And if you stay with me until the end of this video, you'll discover exactly how the timeline of regret unfolds and how it proves your own power, your own value, and your unstoppable strength. When someone avoids connection, when they distance themselves out of fear or habit, it can leave a lasting mark on the heart of the one who cared deeply. At first, it feels confusing. You may find yourself questioning, was it something I did, something I didn't do? The mind races, searching for logic, for answers, for closure. But here's the truth that human psychology reveals. Avoidant behavior is rarely about you. It is almost always about their own fear. The fear of being vulnerable, the fear of being controlled, or the fear of losing their sense of independence. They can push you away, ignore your needs, and retreat when things feel too real. And while they create distance, you are the one left feeling the void, feeling the pain, wondering if it's possible to ever feel whole again. This is the stage where the first cracks of regret appear. It doesn't come as a loud confession or dramatic moment. Instead, it begins as a whisper inside their mind, a subtle stirring that something precious is missing. Human brains are wired to notice patterns, to remember rewards and losses. When someone who mattered to them is no longer there, the mind starts replaying memories, small details that were once overlooked. Maybe it's the way you laughed at something silly, the way your presence made life lighter, or the quiet moments where your support felt effortless. Every tiny memory becomes a weight. Every forgotten gesture now a reminder of what they failed to appreciate. And this is where the first twinges of discomfort begin, the first signs that regret is waking up inside them. But here's where it becomes truly interesting from a psychological perspective. Humans feel loss more intensely than gain. It is called the negativity bias, the tendency to focus on what's missing rather than what's present. That's why avoidant exes don't always see the full value of someone while they're still in the picture. They take the closeness for granted. They push, they pull, they retreat. And then one day, when you've grown, when your life has started moving forward, that bias kicks in. Suddenly, they are haunted by absence. And the deeper the bond they once had, the sharper the realization. It's like trying to grasp water with your hands. The more you try to hold on to it now, the more you understand what was slipping away all along. It is during this phase that regret begins to take shape, slowly but powerfully. It is not always a loud, dramatic, "I miss you" moment. Often it is quiet. It is a pang when they see something that reminds them of you. It is a pause in their day, a lingering thought that interrupts their routine. They might try to convince themselves it's fleeting, that they are fine without you. But deep down, a part of them knows the truth. They have lost someone who truly mattered, and no distraction can replace that missing piece. This is the part of the timeline that many people fail to understand, the quiet, creeping awareness that grows stronger with each passing day. It is painful because it reflects a truth they avoided facing when it could have mattered most. Your worth, your presence, and your love were never theirs to dismiss lightly. And here is the reward for those who stay with this journey. By understanding this timeline of regret, you will see something most people never notice. You will see how your absence becomes their awakening. You will realize that their regret, though it may feel bitter, is actually a reflection of your own power. It is proof that you were irreplaceable, that your presence mattered, and that their avoidance could not diminish the strength of what you gave. It is also a reminder that while they are lost in regret, you have the ability to grow, to heal, and to thrive, without waiting for their realization or permission. Regret follows a natural rhythm, a timeline built by human psychology, and it often starts long before they reach out, or even before they consciously admit they miss you. It begins with those first subtle stirrings, moves through quiet reflection, and eventually reaches a point where absence becomes unbearable. But by then, you have already stepped into a new version of yourself, a version that no longer waits for validation or recognition from those who failed to appreciate you. And that is where the power lies. Understanding this timeline isn't about revenge or wishing them pain. It's about recognizing your own value, your own growth, and the undeniable truth that someone else's regret is not your burden. So, as this video unfolds, you will discover the stages of regret that every avoidant ex eventually experiences. You will see how their mind processes loss, how memories ignite longing, and how absence forces reflection. But more importantly, you will understand why none of this changes the life you are building now. By staying with this video until the end, you will unlock the insight to not only witness the timeline of regret, but to claim your own emotional freedom. You will see how their regret is a silent acknowledgement of your worth, and how it can serve as fuel for your own growth, confidence, and unstoppable strength. Because in the end, their regret is not your story. It is their mirror. And watching it unfold is not about waiting for them to change. It is about seeing yourself rise above, stronger, wiser, and unshakable. The moment after someone walks away, the mind refuses to let go easily. There's a strange mixture of relief and emptiness, freedom and loss. It feels like standing at the edge of a cliff, knowing you have room to breathe, but still haunted by the echo of what you left behind. Humans are wired to remember emotional connections far more vividly than ordinary experiences. Every shared smile, every conversation that once seemed casual, now appears in sharp detail. The mind does not simply erase people who were meaningful, it preserves them, like a photograph you cannot close. And for the person who avoided closeness, this is where the first cracks of realization start to show. They begin to sense the absence in ways they cannot ignore. At first, it might seem subtle. They may catch themselves pausing when a memory crosses their mind. A song plays, a place triggers a recollection, and suddenly the weight of absence presses on their chest. This is no coincidence. Psychology teaches that emotional memories are stored with intensity, and their impact grows stronger when the person who caused them is no longer present. Avoidant individuals often bury feelings behind logic or distance, but their mind cannot fully suppress the recognition that something irreplaceable is gone. It's an internal tension that builds quietly, unnoticed by the outside world, but impossible to escape internally. During this stage, the person begins to reflect, not just on the relationship, but on their own choices. Human beings have an inherent need to make sense of loss. When someone leaves, the avoidant ex starts replaying moments in their head. The times they withdrew, the words they didn't speak, the gestures they overlooked. This reflection is rarely pleasant. It carries a sharp sting because it highlights what they lost by pushing you away. This stage is subtle, almost invisible, yet it is the beginning of a deep psychological process. Regret does not explode suddenly. It grows quietly, nurtured by absence and self-awareness. The growing tension often leads to unexpected emotional responses. Avoidant individuals may feel restless, uneasy, or even agitated for no clear reason. Human psychology explains this as a reaction to cognitive dissonance. They acted according to fear and self-protection, yet now the result is pain and longing. This internal conflict creates a discomfort they cannot rationalize away. Memories of what they had clash with the reality of what they lost. And as this discomfort persists, it begins to shape their behavior, subtly influencing the way they think, speak, and even relate to others around them. One of the most striking elements in this timeline is the power of comparison. Once absence settles in, they begin measuring their life against the time they shared with you. They notice things they didn't appreciate before: the care you offered, the patience you had, the moments of warmth that seemed ordinary at the time. Humans have a natural tendency to evaluate value in hindsight, especially when it comes to emotional investments. This is why the realization hits stronger over time. What once felt normal or even taken for granted now appears rare and precious. And it is this realization that fuels the early stages of deep regret. During this phase, they may also start experiencing a sense of vulnerability they never allowed themselves to feel before. Avoidant people often avoid emotional closeness to protect themselves from pain. But once that protective barrier is broken by absence, they are forced to confront feelings they tried to suppress. Anxiety may rise, along with an undeniable longing. They may feel unsettled at night, distracted during the day, or even nostalgic about moments they once dismissed. All of these reactions are rooted in the human need for connection, which cannot be ignored indefinitely. The most important aspect of this stage is that the recognition of loss begins before any action is taken. Often, they do not reach out immediately and sometimes never do. The psychology behind this is simple. True emotional understanding takes time. The brain must process the gap between expectation and reality. The more significant the connection, the more intense the processing. This explains why avoidance often turns into a delayed awareness of value. They may continue their routines, appear composed to others, and even convince themselves they are fine. But inside, the mind is replaying, analyzing, and feeling the consequences of choices made in fear rather than love. This period of quiet reflection can also bring insight into their own limitations. Avoidant individuals often begin to notice that emotional distance cannot fully shield them from loss. The very strategies they use to protect themselves now contribute to their discomfort. They realize that running from closeness does not prevent pain, it simply delays confrontation with it. The absence of what was once steady and familiar begins to expose the fragility of their emotional framework. And this awareness, though painful, is a turning point. It marks the moment when regret starts taking root, shaping the way they perceive what they have lost and what they might never get back. It is during this phase that subtle triggers intensify the awareness of loss. Simple reminders, a shared memory, a song, or a familiar habit, act as emotional amplifiers. Human brains are designed to respond to triggers that were once associated with pleasure and connection. Even small cues can evoke powerful responses, and the avoidant X experiences a slow, deepening understanding. Absence is permanent, and what they lost cannot simply be replaced. Each memory becomes a silent proof of value. Each moment remembered is a testament to what they failed to cherish. And yet, despite all of this, the power lies not in their regret, but in your response. This is the moment where awareness of their loss can fuel your growth rather than your pain. The timeline of regret, when understood, becomes a mirror reflecting your own strength, your worth, and your ability to move forward unshaken. Their delayed realization does not define your life. It simply demonstrates that what you offered was meaningful, authentic, and irreplaceable. Your path continues upward, while they remain in the shadow of what they once had, but never fully embraced. By understanding this stage, it becomes clear that early regret is not immediate. It grows slowly, silently, and almost invisibly. It begins with subtle reflection, evolves through cognitive dissonance, and is fueled by absence and comparison. Each step is rooted in basic human psychology. The brain cannot ignore loss, the heart cannot dismiss meaningful connection, and the mind cannot avoid the truth of what was once valued but now vanished. And as this realization spreads internally, it sets the stage for the next phase, where the awareness of absence transforms into a longing that can no longer be silenced. The next stage begins when the avoidant X starts to truly confront their own patterns. Up until now, their reflection was quiet, mostly internal, and often dismissed. But gradually, the distance they created forces a kind of self-examination they cannot avoid. They begin to realize that the way they withdrew wasn't harmless. It shaped the course of the relationship, and now it has left an emptiness they cannot fill. Human psychology shows that people often resist looking inward when their choices have caused discomfort, but absence strips away excuses. The more they observe life without you, the more they notice what was missing. That void cannot be ignored, and the mind instinctively seeks to understand why it exists. At this stage, they begin to remember not just the big moments, but the small, subtle ways you made life better. Perhaps it was the consistency of your presence, the way you seemed to understand without explanation, or the quiet gestures that made them feel safe. These details, which once seemed ordinary, now take on profound significance. The brain is wired to assign more weight to what cannot be regained, and the avoidant X experiences this vividly. Each memory becomes a mirror, reflecting the value they failed to appreciate while it was right in front of them. This stage is also marked by an internal struggle. Avoidant personalities are used to controlling their emotional environment, avoiding pain by keeping distance. Now, that very strategy becomes their challenge. Their mind wrestles with regret, guilt, and longing. Cognitive dissonance arises. They wanted freedom, yet freedom feels hollow without the connection they once rejected. The tension between desire and past choices grows, often leading to moments of profound restlessness. They may try to rationalize, to minimize the importance of what was lost, but the more they analyze, the clearer it becomes that some things cannot be dismissed so easily. The emotional intensity begins to grow because humans are naturally drawn to reflection when confronted with absence. They notice patterns they overlooked before, how their presence mattered, how your support shaped their days, and how their actions or inactions pushed away what was most valuable. Every memory becomes sharper, every gesture more meaningful. This stage highlights a psychological truth. Loss teaches more than presence ever could. People often learn the value of love, care, and commitment only after it is no longer available to them. For the avoidant ex, this realization is both painful and humbling. This period often introduces a subtle yearning. The mind starts to imagine what could have been if choices were different. They replay conversations, moments of connection, and even ordinary routines, searching for ways they might have kept the relationship intact. Human brains are wired for counterfactual thinking, which is imagining alternative outcomes. In this case, the counterfactual scenario fuels regret. If only I had been more present. If only I had taken a chance. If only I had allowed myself to feel fully. Each thought reinforces the emotional weight of absence, making them aware that what they lost was not replaceable. Alongside this longing comes a growing awareness of personal limitations. Avoidant individuals begin to see how fear shaped their decisions. They notice how they prioritized self-protection over meaningful connection. Psychology tells us that awareness of one's own mistakes triggers a combination of shame, regret, and introspection. For them, it becomes impossible to ignore that their avoidance cost something truly significant. The more they see this, the more intense the internal recognition of what they let go. This stage also shows the role of human attachment. Even individuals who avoid intimacy have deep psychological needs for connection. When that bond is severed, it creates discomfort that cannot be resolved by distraction or rationalization. The absence of what they once had leads to subtle but persistent emotional reminders, moments when their mind drifts to memories they cannot recreate. These reminders trigger both reflection and emotional growth, forcing them to confront feelings they had long buried. In a way, the absence acts as a teacher, showing them what they undervalued when it mattered most. At this point, avoidance begins to feel like a mistake. They may notice that their freedom, once cherished, now feels hollow. Life without the connection exposes gaps that cannot be filled by superficial distractions. The brain interprets these gaps as signals of loss, increasing both emotional discomfort and psychological awareness. The avoidant ex begins to recognize that their own fear limited their ability to act in ways that could have preserved the relationship. And this realization is both sharp and transformative. It is the first acknowledgement that regret is real, personal, and inescapable. The beauty of this stage lies in its silent intensity. They may not reach out, and they may never openly admit their feelings. Yet internally, a profound shift occurs. Reflection transforms into understanding. Regret moves from vague discomfort to a clearer recognition of their mistakes. They start to grasp that absence has consequences and that some opportunities once gone cannot be reclaimed. This stage is pivotal because it signals a psychological turning point. The avoidant ex is no longer indifferent. They are beginning to feel the true weight of what they lost, and that weight is rooted in genuine awareness rather than temporary longing. For those who have experienced this absence, it is a confirmation of value. The avoidant ex's delayed recognition is evidence that your presence mattered more than they realized. The timeline of regret, when understood, highlights a universal truth. People often fail to see their blessings until they are gone, and as their awareness grows, it becomes a quiet, undeniable acknowledgement of the significance you held in their life. It also reminds you that your growth, strength, and self-worth are independent of their realization. This stage is a turning point not for them, but for you. Their awareness, their internal struggle, their regret, all of it proves that you were essential in ways they could not appreciate at the time. And while they wrestle with these feelings, you continue moving forward, stronger and more self-aware. Their journey through regret is mirrored by your journey through growth. Their recognition does not control your path. It only highlights the value you carried all along, the consistency, love, and authenticity that made you irreplaceable. The first visible signs of regret are subtle, almost unnoticeable, but they carry immense weight. It begins as hesitation, a pause in decisions, a glance back at memories, a sudden thought that lingers longer than it should. The avoidant ex starts to notice the emptiness around them, a quiet void that no new distraction can fill. Human minds are wired to seek closure and meaning, and when someone who mattered deeply is absent, the brain instinctively begins to search for explanations. It looks for patterns, it revisits past choices, and it begins to recognize mistakes that were once invisible. This is the earliest phase where regret truly surfaces, and it is as powerful as it is silent. Often, these early signs manifest in reflection on the smallest details. They may recall laughter shared, a gesture of care, or a simple moment of understanding that seemed ordinary at the time. Each memory becomes sharper, each moment more precious. The psychology behind this is simple. The human mind attaches more significance to what cannot be reclaimed. When presence becomes absence, the brain elevates memories, making them feel larger than they did in real life. For the avoidant ex, these recollections are not just nostalgic. They are unsettling reminders that something essential was lost through their own actions. During this stage, internal questioning begins. They wonder why certain patterns occurred, why they acted in ways that created distance, and why they failed to recognize value when it was right in front of them. Cognitive dissonance emerges, a conflict between their desire for independence and the realization that freedom without connection feels empty. This struggle can lead to anxiety, restlessness, and even subtle moments of self-doubt. Their mind becomes a constant observer of what was, and it forces them to face the truth they once ignored. Absence cannot erase what was meaningful. The early signs of regret also appear in behavior, though often quietly. They may hesitate before committing to choices, reflect longer on decisions, or even change the way they interact with others. These behaviors are rooted in the understanding that their previous actions had consequences. Avoidant individuals often fail to see the immediate impact of their distance, but the mind stores every interaction and every moment of connection. Over time, these stored experiences resurface, shaping their awareness and subtly guiding their behavior in ways they cannot fully control. Another crucial element of this stage is emotional sensitivity. Small reminders, a song, a familiar place, even a phrase, can trigger a surge of feelings. Humans have a deep psychological connection between memory and emotion, which means that past experiences are rarely forgotten completely. For the avoidant ex, these triggers awaken a longing that they had long resisted. It is not sudden love or impulsive action. It is a recognition that the absence of connection has created a void that nothing else can fill. This emotional awakening marks a turning point in their internal timeline of regret. This period also highlights the role of comparison. They begin evaluating their current reality against the life they had with you. Even if they avoid acknowledging it outwardly, internally, they notice the difference in depth, comfort, and authenticity. Humans are naturally attuned to loss and gain, and what is lost often appears more valuable in hindsight. They may start to recognize that the stability, understanding, and care you provided cannot be easily replaced. Every reflection reinforces the reality that your presence was not just appreciated, it was essential to their sense of well-being. At the same time, subtle longing begins to emerge. They may imagine what could have been if different choices were made, or if they had allowed themselves to be more vulnerable. The brain's tendency for counterfactual thinking intensifies these feelings, making them replay scenarios that never occurred. What if I had stayed present? Or what if I had shown up differently? These questions are a natural psychological response to absence. They do not guarantee action, but they reveal the awakening of awareness and the first real acknowledgement that their avoidance had consequences beyond their immediate understanding. During this stage, the avoidant ex may experience quiet moments of regret that feel uncomfortable to ignore. Humans are naturally motivated to seek resolution, and when a meaningful connection is absent, that unresolved tension grows. It can appear as restlessness in routine, sudden nostalgia, or fleeting thoughts about the past. Each instance is a signal that their mind is processing what they lost, and that their internal awareness of value is beginning to solidify. They are beginning to realize that distance created not freedom, but a sense of incompleteness that cannot be erased. Importantly, this early recognition does not necessarily lead to contact or reconciliation. It is primarily an internal experience. Avoidant personalities often struggle with expressing emotion, especially after the fact. Yet this stage is critical because it lays the foundation for deeper, more pronounced regret later. It is the point where awareness intersects with emotional reality, and the realization that absence is permanent begins to take hold. This stage teaches a powerful lesson about human psychology. Regret is strongest when it is delayed, when the mind finally understands the cost of choices made in fear rather than love. For those watching, understanding this stage is empowering. It reveals that your absence has weight, and that their delayed awareness is a reflection of your value. Their subtle internal struggle is proof that what you brought into their life mattered deeply. This is not about them changing or returning. It is about recognizing that your presence was irreplaceable. Every memory they revisit, every thought that lingers, every moment of longing is confirmation that you were meaningful, essential, and transformative in ways they are only now beginning to understand. The early signs of regret are like sparks. They may be quiet, easily overlooked, but they have the potential to ignite understanding. And as these sparks accumulate over time, they create a momentum that leads to stronger awareness, deeper reflection, and eventually undeniable recognition of what they lost. By witnessing this, you can see the timeline unfold, understand the psychology behind it, and recognize that their delayed realization does not diminish your growth. It highlights it.